My name is Adriane Heflin, and the PAD taught me to follow my dreams.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the PAD podcast. My name is Rob Morgan. I teach design at WashU, and I'm very, very excited to bring to you a new episode. This one featuring Adriane Heflin. It is our first technical or design type person on the podcast, and Adriane is a great first guest in that category. Adriane is the technical director at the Children's Theater Company in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and has been there 17 years. Prior to that, she was at the Guthrie Theater for about 9 years. She is so incredibly talented. I have worked with her directly. She is just a source of wonderful inspiration for our students, for me. She's working at a theater company that is just top-notch. It is the largest children's theater company in the country, in my opinion, one of the best in the world. So she brings her enthusiasm, her passion, her empathy to this podcast. You can just hear it. And I'm very excited to bring that to you. So with that, I will stop talking. She will start talking. Please enjoy this interview of Adriane Heflin. All right, my guest today on the podcast is Adriane Heflin, an alum from WashU, proud alum. Am I right to say that, Adriane?
Absolutely.
Full disclosure, I've known Adriane before I designed, or I had a, should I say, there was a set that went from, I believe, San Jose all the way to Minneapolis of a Christmas Story set I designed some years ago. But even before Adriane's time at the Children's Theater Company, which is where she joins us from today, my official title, to be fair, was draftsperson, carpenter, welder, and sometimes painter. And I remember asking my boss one day, why am I just not the assistant technical director? And he said, because then you'd be salary and then they'd own you. So anyway, I am so glad I think you might be one of the first sort of, in my line of work, technical theater folks to be on the podcast. And I'm super excited, and I'm super excited to talk to you about your WashU journey. So thank you for joining the podcast, Adriane.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have a conversation and take a trip back down memory lane to WashU.
I love it. I love it. So if you would start with Adriane Heflin's origin story. Like, how did you even find out about WashU? Because you grew up, I think, on Long Island.
I did. So yeah. So I grew up in New York on the North Shore of Long Island, and I was super lucky that my parents involved me in lots of different things growing up as a kid. And I had an older sister, and she did theater, and so of course I wanted to do theater. And when I was younger, I loved to sing and dance and act, and I got involved in doing the plays, and I went to a fine arts camp in the summer, and we did theater there, and I like to dance. I danced for many, many, many years, and I really enjoyed that stuff. But I also enjoyed making things. I was a crafter, I liked to sketch and draw and build things and sew things. But I'm not a super talented artist. Like I can't draw a realistic tree or a portrait, and I always kind of struggled because I liked making things. I never knew what to make. Like if someone said, "Hey, make, why don't you draw this?" I would be like, "Oh, that's great, I'll do that," And this is gonna sound silly, but when I was in fifth grade, they had these little like mini classes to kind of get us ready for picking electives in our middle school. And they had one about mechanical drawing. And they taught us, because this was back in the day, how to draw on paper with a T-square and a triangle and special lead, And
Yeah.
we learned how to draw isometric drawings, right? So
Mhm.
those little like three-dimensional cubes that looked real, they looked three-dimensional. And I was like blown away because I could never draw anything that looked real. But they looked three-dimensional. I learned about
Yeah.
two-point perspective, and it like opened up my mind. And I thought this drafting thing was architecture. Now I don't know how I put that together, but I liked building things, and so drafting was architecture and performing was theater. And I was super lucky. My parents, we had means, and they took me to see Broadway shows, and they
Oh,
took me to
wow.
museums in the city and in Manhattan. I say the city because I'm a New Yorker, in Manhattan, and so I kind of had exposure to all this great culture, but I never sort of understood all the various options that were out there for jobs. And when it came time to go to college, I very clearly understood that, well, I am not going to make a living as an actor. That is clearly not happening. And so I said, said, I'll be an architect. I had taken lots of architecture classes in high school, the ones they offered, and I had interned at an architecture firm. I sort of thought, well, I'll go to school for architecture. By the time I'm 26, I'll have my own firm. Like, had it all planned out, right?
Right.
And I knew also that I wanted to leave New York. I wanted to
Oh,
see more of the country. I didn't want to be in New York anymore. And so I looked for architecture schools, and WashU has a fantastic school of architecture. And so I applied and I got in.
great.
And so my
Wow.
freshman year, I was not in the liberal arts college. I was at the architecture school
Sure.
in Givens Hall, right? It was Givens, I think.
Yep.
And I had my art bin and my easel, and I like went to all my classes, and I was learning about all these things, and I didn't do any theater my freshman year at all. And between freshman and sophomore year at WashU, in high school I had taken French, but I had always wanted to learn Italian. So my freshman year I took Italian, and they had foreign language programs where you could like go to Italy, and I went for 6 weeks and I got 7 credits towards like graduating college, and I got to go to Italy in the summer, which was
Nice.
amazing. And I highly,
Nice.
highly recommend, if you get the chance to study abroad, please do so, right? Our
Yes.
country is only 250 years old, and there are so many countries out there that are so much older and have
So
so
much.
much more to
Yeah.
offer. Like, we are one tiny little piece of the world. So,
Good advice. So this is you're a rising sophomore at this point, right?
yes.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
I was a rising sophomore in that summer, and there were like 17 or 18 of us on the trip in Italy, and we spent 6 weeks in this town called Arezzo, and it was amazing. And like, out of those 16 or 17 kids, 3 or 4 of them were involved in the performing arts department,
Oh,
just
nice.
coincidentally. Right. And, I don't know, you guys probably still do. We called it the PAD, right? And it was
Yeah.
like PAD this, theater that. They would talk and talk. And I actually remember Jeff Pagliano was on the trip with me, and his birthday was in the summer, and we wanted to throw a surprise birthday party for him. And Jeff and I was the ruse, and I took Jeff, and we saw an Italian production of Our Town
Oh
in
my
this
gosh.
tiny little town. It was in Italian. It was wild. Okay, I clear memories of that.
I
So
love
I
it.
took Jeff away so that they could set up, and when we got back from the play, we all said, "Surprise! It was happy birthday!" Right? And I just remember thinking like, oh my God, we talked about theater, and I was really like sad my freshman year, and I kind of didn't know why. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't sure what was going on. And I was like, oh, I really miss doing theater.
Mm-hmm.
Really miss that. And so
Yeah.
it came back for sophomore year. I said, okay, maybe I could get like a minor, right? And
Well,
so I took,
before you continue though, I want to
yeah,
point out, I think this is so, I don't know, elegantly beautiful that what was intended to be a surprise for someone else ended up surprising you with what would become your future career. Uh,
totally. I
That's
mean, and
amazing.
and they were all great people on the trip,
Yeah.
and it was just, we just talked about theater a lot, and I didn't realize how much I missed it. That the community of it, the collaborative nature of it. Yeah, so when I came back to sophomore year, I still had my architecture classes in my studio, but I took the two sort of intro to everything classes that the theater department offered, which was intro to acting
Yeah.
and 212, which at the
212,
time,
which
does that
I
still
teach
exist?
next semester. Oh, yes, I teach it every third semester.
Fantastic, right? So intro to backstage, which was
Yep.
212.
Yep.
And I cannot remember who taught it. Maybe it was the guy who was the TD at the time, Rick Kuykendall, but
Uh-huh.
in that backstage class, I learned about the position of the technical director, which is the marriage of
Exactly.
theater and architecture. And I said, oh my God, okay, I could do architecture of theater? And I said, I gotta really, 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 really think about this. And I will never forget this. There was one weekend, I was goofing around with my friends, and we were like throwing around a ball in the quad, and
Uh-huh.
I caught it wrong, and I jammed my finger, and I hurt my hand. And the next day I had to go to architecture class, 2D drawing class, which I sucked at. And I was so frustrated. My hand hurt. I couldn't draw. I couldn't draw anyway because I'm not like a fine artist.
Hmm.
And I left class to go back through the like student union back to the dorms on South 40. And for that backstage class, you had to be on the crew of a show. And I was doing some Mad Forest in the black box. and I was running the light board, okay? And so I was like up and, helping tech things at night and up late doing my homework. And I'm tired and my hand hurts and I'm an architecture student and I'm walking back to my dorm room. And what I thought was, well, I'll just go stop in the theater and see if they need any help.
Oh.
And I said to myself, Adrian, you gotta listen.
Mm.
This is where you want to be,
Hmm.
right? This is where you want to be.
Yeah.
And I remember I called my parents and I said, I think I want to change my major. Like I think I actually want to do theater. And I'm super lucky. My parents were super supportive. They
Oh.
were like, all right, let's do it.
And you called them that night?
I don't remember if it was that night, but it was
But it was,
really
yeah.
shortly after that. I mean,
Nice. Nice.
um,
Ah, I
and
love that story. There's a story that Herbie Hancock tells. I saw an interview with him once, and he tells a similar story where he went to school for, I don't recall, psychology or something. And he just was so drawn to music and so drawn to music. And at one point in this interview, he says, I turned to myself, if that's even a thing, I turned to myself and I said, well, who are you trying to kid? Like, you got to go through that door. If you don't, you'll never know if you could have been a musician. And I mean, seems like that was your turning point at that point.
absolutely. I mean, and I remember like I went into the theater and I think I taped up Duvetine on the door. I mean, it was some menial task that was not useful, right? Even,
Right.
but it was like that's where I felt like home.
Oh,
Um, and
nice.
yeah, and so sophomore year, I changed my major. I transferred out of the architecture school and into the liberal arts school.
Hmm.
And
You signed your letter of resignation to architecture.
yeah, I guess so, and I will say I did finish a minor in architecture.
Oh, well, oh, wow, good.
So I did follow through. I do love it, and,
Yeah.
and I did learn things that I think were helpful for the job I hold today in that minor. But
And so you were,
yeah,
did you major in drama eventually and then minor in architecture?
yes.
Is that
So I
right?
have
Gotcha.
a BA with a theater degree. Yes.
Gotcha, gotcha. And then you also said before we started recording that you were involved in an extracurricular way, but still doing drama. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and so when I came back sophomore year, the people that were on the trip with me talked about this thing called INPO, which was in no particular order.
Oh, never heard of that
And
one.
what's that?
I've never heard of that one.
Oh my God, INPO was it was like every other Friday, and Michael Thomas Holmes was the MC. You basically it was like a stand-up night.
Oh,
You
nice.
could
Okay.
sign up if you had an act that you wanted to do. You just signed up on this sign-up sheet, and people did all sorts of performative things. They
Oh,
sang, they did monologues, they danced, they did skits, they did
I love it.
improv comedy, all these different kinds of things. And then it was in the black box on Friday nights, and it was Mike would get up and MC it, and it was literally in no particular order. He would just pick a number off the list, and whoever it was got had to stand up and do their act.
I love it.
Um,
We
and
got to
so,
bring
so
that back. That sounds like
oh my
a
God, it
great
was a
evening.
fantastic night, a fantastic night.
And you
And
said it was a weekly event
I think it was every other week,
every
maybe.
other week.
And there was
Wow.
there was a sign up down in the PAD, and when I went back, when I was in high school, I was an actor. I didn't know a lot about tech theater yet, and so I had a monologue that I did in my high school that was about this girl whose mother was dying. And she had a bowl of clear glass marbles. And every day her mother would take a marble and drop it on the floor and let it roll away.
Hmm.
They were memories that she was letting go. And at the end of the monologue, it's very, very sad. And it's about this girl remembering her mother's death, right?
Right,
And at
right.
the end of the monologue, she says something like, one night I was in my room and I heard this, and she spills the she spills the bowl, and and the marbles go crashing and flying across the bowl. And she goes, and I
Yeah.
walked in there and my mother was gone, right? But in her hand, that was this, and she opens her hand and there's still one marble, and she says, what is it? I keep it in my hand all day. It makes the day longer. That was it. Like the mother
Oh,
would hold on to these marbles and remember a memory, and it would make her day longer as she was ill. And
oh.
so I signed up to do INPO, and I did this monologue, and it actually went really well, which is like I'm not a performer, but later on, much later on in the end of the year, they would bring back the best of. They would invite them to do their acts for the end of the year. And throughout my sophomore year, I started to like get involved and do more.
Sure.
And so people started to get to know me, but not as an actor, as a technician.
Yeah.
And actually, at the end of the year, I was sitting in the meeting where they were like trying to figure out what acts to bring back, and they were like, "Oh, bring back that marble girl," and they were like, "Adrian," and they were like, "No, no, 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 the marble girl." And it was like they didn't even realize it was me. It was so funny, but
And so you were seated right there, and you're
I,
like, I'm the
yeah, it
marble
was
girl you
funny.
seek.
Yeah, no, but listen, the theater department was like, it was just such a great place of like people who all wanted to just get involved and do great work together, and
Sure.
we're all really
Yeah.
supportive of each other at the time, and
Oh, it sounds
yeah,
like it
no,
was very much a family for you that
it it was, it's
mhm.
like I found my people, right? It's like you
Mhm.
gotta find your tribe, and
Yeah.
I really did find my tribe there. My friends, I have very few friends that I had from freshman year. They're most of them are ones I met
Or
in the theater department and on.
that you're still in touch with, you mean?
Some of them,
Oh,
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I'm so terrible at keeping in touch with
It's
people. I'm sorry to
okay.
all you people that I am terrible at that. It kind of sounds awful, but Facebook has been helpful for that because I'm old,
Sure.
so I'm
Sure,
on
sure.
Facebook. But
Fair, fair. I don't mean to make this like an Oscar speech where you overlook someone's
no,
name.
no, it's okay.
Well, that's fascinating. So you graduate with a drama major and an architecture minor.
I
And
did.
and then what happened for you? It's sometimes students see the end of their time, their 4 years, as this sort of cliff, and they're not sure what to do. And what did you do in that instance?
You bet. So I feel really lucky that while I was at WashU, I took classes in all the different disciplines of theater. Like, I took a lighting class and I took a scene design class and I took a technical direction courses. And it's very easy to say, well, I want to be a designer, right? Most people are designers, I feel like.
Yeah.
And I remember, going back to that feeling when I was a kid where like I liked to make things, but I never knew what to make. And life is full of different people who have different skill sets, right?
Right, right.
When you do projects, there are some people who are the idea people. They're the ones who come up with the ideas of what they want to see, and they come up with 16 different options of how you could, of what we should do. So those are the idea people. Then you
Right.
have the implementer people. Those are
Yes.
the people who take other people's ideas and come up with plans and ideas of how to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
How to implement those designs or those ideas. And then you have like the worker bees, right?
Hmm.
Those are the doer people, the
Yeah.
people who take the plans that other people make and make them actually a real thing. In the theater, right? The idea people are the creative team. Those are the
Hmm.
scenic designers, the lighting designers, the sound designers, right? Costume designers. Those are the people who say, this is what I think our world should be. Then you have the technical managers. These are the people who are the implementers. They
Hmm.
take the designer's ideas and they say, okay, I can make that happen for you by connecting these dots, buying these materials, doing this structural design, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the artisans. These are the people, the carpenters, the painters, the sewers, the dyers, the
Sure.
electricians. They're the ones who make the implementers people's work actually happen.
Yeah.
And you need all three of those people to do everything in every field, right? And so
Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel really lucky that I realized I was an implementer. I was
Mm.
not a designer.
Okay, fair. Yeah.
I never knew what to make, but if
Hmm.
someone said, "Hey, can you make this?" I could always make it happen. And I'm so blessed that I figured that out when I was 20,
Yeah.
not when I was 40. And because of that, I realized I wanted to be a technical director and not a scenic designer.
But you're right to point out that without the implementers, without the artisans, the things I do is the sort of, what was it called? The
The
the idea
creators.
people.
Yeah, the idea people.
This is an audio only podcast, but you know that behind me are a bunch of models, and students seem to sort of marvel at those models. And I'm always quick to point out, look, without the implementers, without the artisans, without people like you, these are just dollhouses. They mean nothing. They're just a dollhouse. They don't go beyond this little toy stage. I rely on a team of people and try to instill in my own students that they have to be, as the idea folks, as the vision, the designers, they have to also be cheerleaders for their idea. Sometimes that's hard to get students to do. So you saw yourself as an implementer, and then so did you find yourself marketable immediately after college, and where did you land after St. Louis?
Yeah, so the reason I say this is because I knew that I wanted to be a technical director,
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah.
that was the path I was going to travel, and that a technical director was a manager. And when I was at WashU, like the summers between sophomore and junior year, and junior and senior year, I went and I worked summer stock. Between sophomore and junior year, I went to Williamstown Theater Festival,
Oh yeah.
where
Well
I was an
respected one.
intern, an
Sure.
unpaid intern, which you
Oh
should not
Lord.
do anymore, but back in the day, that's what we did.
Fair. Yes.
And I worked 1,200 hours in 12 weeks, and I think I paid them for housing, right?
Oh my Lord.
Um,
Wow.
yep. Okay. And then between junior and senior year, I was a carpenter for Stages St. Louis.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
I stayed in town. And then between senior year and what I ended up doing after college, I actually worked at Opera Theater St. Louis. During my senior year, I hooked up with Opera Theater St. Louis, and at the time, their technical director was a UMKC graduate student. I got a gig as an assistant to the technical director,
Got
which
it.
basically meant that I got to do some drafting for their shop and
Sure.
get some credit for it, and a thing on my resume, a
Yeah.
tick on my resume saying that I did that. But then I worked on their changeover crew at OTSL over the summer. And so I knew I wanted to be a manager, and I knew that I didn't know anything about managing people yet. I had spent time working in the shop at WashU, and so I built things for shows. And actually, my senior year at WashU, they let me TD a show on the main stage.
Oh wow,
And
great.
they told me at the time I was the first student they ever let do that. Who knows, right?
Oh, probably
Uh,
true, I think.
Made back in the day, right? And so that was a very exciting opportunity for me. And I decided, because I clearly was a glutton for punishment, that I wanted to graduate with honors. And I
Hmm.
had pretty good grades. I was lucky. I was a good student, and so I had to write a thesis. And so I wrote a technical direction handbook for WashU.
Oh wow. I
Um,
have to get a copy of this.
which yeah, I still have it somewhere. It's on, I point behind me. It's on my shelf
I'm
somewhere.
ashamed to say I have not read
That's really
it.
totally fine. And so I graduated magna cum laude,
Wow.
because I wrote the book. And what I learned was that I knew how to be a carpenter, but I didn't really, but I was not a good enough artisan to do that for a job. My skills are really about leading people and organizing processes, and so that I said I am not ready to go out in the real world and be in charge of people. Like, I need more training. And so I chose to go to graduate school right away.
Oh, gotcha. Sure,
That
sure.
instead of taking time off and working and then seeing how I did, I was not ready to get out in the big bad world yet. And
Yeah. Well, it'd be fair to say that you were working in those summers in between, that you were,
absolutely.
some people pack that in after they graduate, but you had already had those experiences.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I saw that, like, I was not ready to be in charge of people
Sure.
yet. I was super green, super green, and learning management is really important. It's a different set of skills, and
So you went to a little known drama school called Yale.
I did. I remember going to
The theater joke.
USITT.
Okay.
Exactly. I went to USITT my senior year,
Hmm.
at WashU with Sybil Wickersheimer. She was also
I
in
know
the
Sybil.
class.
Yes. Okay.
She's fantastic, and she's a
Yes.
great designer. She's
Top
in
notch.
California now. She and I went to USITT, and it was in Las Vegas, and we had both like just turned 21. Woo! That was an awesome trip.
Nice.
And I remember interviewing with a lot of schools, and I was super lucky. I mean, I'd worked hard in school, and I was accepted to the Yale School of Drama for their technical design and production program.
And was
And
Ben Samler running it at that time?
Ben was running the program at that time.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Wow.
And so the year that I got in, there were 10 of us in the technical design and production, TD&P, we would call
Hmm.
it. There were 10 of us in the TD&P program, and I was the only person who had come straight out of undergrad.
Okay.
So I was the youngest. Like, everyone
Sure.
else had gone, worked, and said, all right, time to go back and get some more education, right?
Yeah.
So I was the youngest, and out of the 10 of us, I was the only woman.
Oh my gosh, really? Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Now, that is not uncommon.
No,
The
of course.
technical direction is a largely male field, okay?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I've been doing it for 25 years now, and so luckily I can say it is changing, but it was not at the time. And I spent a lot of my first year there feeling very young and very female.
And so then after Yale, where did you, did you end up moving to the Twin Cities at that point in your career?
Yeah, so in between the years of grad school, I continued to work summer stock
Yeah.
to kind of work towards figuring out where my future was. I did a summer at Maine State Music Theater as their ATD, and I did a summer at Pennsylvania Shakespeare Festival as the technical director. And when I was graduating, the one thing that I didn't understand when I was in college was the different kinds of theater that are out there. And it
Yeah.
wasn't really until probably my second year of grad school that I kind of learned. And when I say that, there's a lot of different ways to do theater in the world, right?
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is regional theater. Theaters like Children's Theater Company or the Guthrie or the Alley or the Goodman, or right, theaters that are nonprofits in cities all across the country who do work and usually have a mission, right? They have a subscriber base. They
Yeah.
often have a theater that they work at that's like their permanent home, right?
Right. Right.
That's regional theater world.
Right.
There's commercial theater. That's Broadway,
Yeah.
right? I used to think, well, I'm going to work on Broadway, right? I'm a worker. Like, of course, it's the Great White Way, right?
Sure.
It wasn't until I was in grad school that I finally learned what Broadway was. Commercial theater is not regional theater, okay?
Yeah.
You're working at a commercial shop like Hudson or Tate or PRG, and you're not connected to the show necessarily or the crew. You're working with
Right.
different design teams, different theaters, different, right? It is for profit and they
Yeah.
pay you more, but
Yeah.
it's a different animal, right?
Absolutely. Sure.
There's educational theater, right?
Yeah.
Like Wash U, people like you who
Yeah.
teach,
Sure.
right? When I was younger, I very much believed those who teach need to do, right? And I hadn't done yet. And so I didn't know enough to teach, and so educational theater is also an amazing place to work, right?
Sure.
You
Sure.
have a young, energetic, passionate workforce who is super interested and excited to get involved and do the work.
Yeah.
But your workforce is less skilled and changes
Yes.
over every 4 years,
Of
right?
course. Yeah. Yeah.
But you get your summers off, right? So, there's
Right.
pros and cons. And you have to enjoy teaching, which
Yeah.
I do. And I have taught at universities and
Sure.
courses over my career, but that's not where my heart is, and honestly not my strengths. I have so much respect for those of you who teach it at universities and colleges across country. It's amazing.
Well, thank you.
And then
I
there's,
want to,
touring theater, right? There's opera, right? There's different places to get involved. And I
yeah.
guess what I learned in grad school that I liked regional theater.
Yeah.
I liked
Yeah.
nonprofit theater. And so when I graduated, I wanted to be a part of a community, have a home base, not a huge creature of change, right? As you can see, I've been at a couple places and I've stayed a really long time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I like to kind of get into a place and get really good working relationships with my staff and my coworkers and figure out how a place works and then bring the best art that we can to that place.
Yeah. I want to make sure we get to what I find. And then you went to the Guthrie eventually. You were at the Guthrie for 9 years, if I
I
understand it.
did. So when I graduated, I looked specifically for assistant technical director jobs in big
Yep.
regional theaters.
Right.
Because I thought I knew nothing. I was still so young and I wanted to find someone to mentor me. And so when I was graduating, there were two big theaters that I looked at that were looking for ATDs. One was the Globe,
Uh-huh.
San
San Diego.
Diego,
Yep.
and one was the Guthrie in Minneapolis. And I didn't
Wow.
know anything about the Twin Cities. I was a New Yorker, like that was just somewhere, like one of those flyover states in the Midwest,
Exactly.
right? And I remember a good friend of mine from college had moved to the Twin Cities because there's a huge music scene here.
Oh, yeah. There definitely is.
And I called her and I was like, Carrie, you moved to Minnesota. That's like officially the middle of nowhere. There's like, what, like ice skating rinks and igloos? Like, what the heck is in Minnesota? And
Right.
she's like, Adriane, there's a lot of theater here. I was like, what theater's in Minnesota? She goes,
Oh,
well,
wow.
the
Yeah.
Guthrie is here. And I was like, I was so naive. I just didn't know anything. I knew that the Guthrie obviously was a very big theater, and it was somewhere in the Midwest that started with M. And
Sure.
I thought it was Milwaukee. Like, I just had no clue. And so I was like, Carrie, the Guthrie is one of the top 5 regional theaters in the country. They're not going to hire me. They're going to want some
Right.
smart guy from Disney, right?
Oh,
6 months later, I got
You
hired as
got
an
the
AD
job.
at the Guthrie.
Yes.
So it just goes to show you, you never know, you
Yeah.
know, always reach for the stars. Send
Yeah.
that application. You have no
What do
idea.
you got to lose? Absolutely.
What have you
Absolutely. I
got
have
to
so
lose?
many stories in my own life where I sent the application going, I got no shot at this. And then something changed. Something happened. My first job at University of Washington, total same story, like
Yeah.
suddenly I had a shot and then I got the job.
Yes.
But what I want to, I guess, cut to, you were at the Guthrie for 9 years, which is a
Yes.
highly respected, for those that don't know, regional theater. But then right there in town, I would argue on the same level of professionalism as the Guthrie is the Children's Theater Company, where you've been a technical director for 17 years now.
Yeah.
I I learned, and I would love to know what you think about this, but in my time there, and it was brief, I was only there for a few years, I, in only in hindsight, truly appreciate how creative that level of theater, children's theater specifically, had to be to just make these children's books come to life. I mean, you do How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and you do all these. I remember when I was there, it was a lot of Babar the Elephant stories, and
Yeah. Yeah.
we did a Invisible Man that was just stunning, and I mean, you name it. Wind in the Willows was a gorgeous show designed by a children's book illustrator. Like, I would love for you to talk about this. This is the largest children's theater in the country.
It is.
That what your job, in my mind, would mean that you have to be even more creative than you would be in a traditional Guthrie role, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. When this job came open at CTC, I was not looking to leave the Guthrie. We had just moved into the new $125 million complex
Yes.
on the
Yeah.
river, and I was, 9 months pregnant. So with my first son, always a good time to make a giant career move, right?
Right.
But you're right. It is rare that in regional theater there are more than one organization in the same city.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to what if myself forever if I don't at least apply and learn more about what is going on over there. And
Yeah.
maybe I'll learn about the theater and I'll decide no harm, no foul. I'm going to stay at the Guthrie. Like, it's all great.
Right.
But I'll never know what if I could have gotten that job, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I applied. And when I came here, I was just blown away. At CTC, our mission is to educate, challenge, and inspire young people and their communities. And
Hmm.
we do that through 4 core values: excellence, imagination, respect, and inclusion. And we live that mission every day. And listen, when I was at the Guthrie, we did amazing work at the very highest level with Broadway
Right.
designers and all that stuff. But I didn't know the why.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
here I've learned the importance of mission work to me.
Yes. Yes.
You know, I can tell you the quality, the production quality of what we do here at CTC is exactly the same as what they do at the Guthrie. It's just
Amen.
that our audience is 8 instead of 80, right?
Yes. Yes.
We are bringing, 250,000 people to our shows every year.
Right.
Over
Right.
60,000 of those are students who come with their schools on like a field trip to a school matinee, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these students, their family might not take them to the theater outside of that school trip. Maybe they go to
Sure.
see the Vikings play instead of football,
Right.
or they
Right.
go to a camping, or culturally theater is not something that is valued, or maybe they can't afford to take their family, right? Because so many young people come and see shows here, this is their first experience with this
Yes.
art form, right?
Yeah.
Because it's their first exposure, it has to be excellent. It
Yeah.
has to be fantastic. When
Right.
kids come see shows here, they learn how to listen to someone tell a story. They learn how to see themselves in a story, how to stand up and fight for social justice or change. They learn
Yes.
empathy, right?
Hmm.
They learn how to be a part of a community. And in today's world, what could be more important than that?
Amen.
Right?
Yes.
We teach kids to become lifelong arts supporters and lifelong theater goers, to become the audiences that go to the Guthrie when they age out, right?
Yes. Yes.
And the
Yes.
stories we tell are fantastic. And, back in the day, we did a lot of what we call page to stage, where we took books and we, represented them on stage very faithfully. Children's Theater Company was the very first theater in the country that Theodore Geisel, right, Dr.
Yes. Yes.
Seuss,
Dr. Seuss. Right.
allowed and licensed to make his work into plays.
Mm-hmm.
So we are the original How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Yes, you are. Yes.
Other ones came after us. And I can tell you actually right now on our stage, we just opened it again for the 12th time.
Nice.
Using the same exact set that we built in 1994. We still,
Yes.
um,
Yeah, I think that might be the one I worked on as well. I mean, I
it's very
remember,
possible.
I mean, there's a sequence in that show, and this is just case in point. It's a sequence in that show when the Grinch is in his sleigh and Max the dog is out in front of him. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's behind a scrim.
It is. It's called the
And
Wild Ride.
oh my
And
God,
we
it will
still do it. And it's
takes your
magical. There's
breath away. You would
the, the,
swear they're
the
both flying.
they're riding down to steal the presents from out of Whoville, and it's done behind a scrim and a lot of old school fantastic theater magic. And the Grinch is on a sleigh, and young Max is running, and it just looks like they're
Yes.
floating magically in the air. You're gonna have to come see it. I'm not gonna give it away.
My jaw was on the floor when I first saw that, and I thought, I have never seen anything like this, and I have to work for this company. I have to be a part of this, honestly, deeply, deeply creative team, starting with you and working on down to, like you said, every artisan you have. I'm just so thrilled that I guess for me, this is a real treat to I've talked to artists, to playwrights, should I say. I've talked to writers, I've talked to dancers, artistic directors like Emily Wells, who you went to college
Yeah.
with, and so you're the first sort of technical person. And I think it's so important that students specifically know that that beautiful theater tree, you can take any branch you want off of it. And, that you are still just as a valuable kind of a collaborative team member as you would be in another branch, another sort of leadership branch. You're heading up, I think, the most creative, hands down, children's theater in the world. And I'm just so grateful to you for telling us your story and the fact that you're a WashU alum. I think I found out maybe after the fact, and because I've known you professionally before I even taught here at WashU, and I'm like, wait a minute, Adrian went to school here.
I did.
So
I did. No, listen, I feel so blessed to have made a life in the arts, And listen, I'm married, I have two kids, right?
yeah, yeah,
And it is absolutely possible to have a life in the arts that
yeah,
for every one actor on stage, there's 50 other people, making sure that they can do their work,
yep,
whether they're creative designer, the creative team, whether they're the backstage crew, the artisans who build the things, the managers who help, the technical managers who help create what's on stages, but also people in our education wing, in
yeah,
publicity, in development, in
absolutely.
artistic management. There are producers, right? There's so many. There's an accounting department, right? Like there's so many different ways that you can get involved to serve the arts.
Yeah,
And serving the arts is about teaching our country empathy, right? It's
yes,
about teaching each other how to listen and how to think about someone else's point of view. And that is relevant in every field. And so,
yeah,
the world feels like a very dark place right now. I
it
think for
does.
a lot of people, not everyone, but for a lot of
True.
people. And, I think that honing into the arts is really important.
Well, I want to finish by saying thank you. Thank you, Adriane Heflin, for spending time and inspiring the next generation of theater artists who started at WashU, walked the same hallways, were members of some of the same student groups. I think that you make hope visible for them. I think when students ask me what your teaching philosophy is, I'm like, oh, it's just 3 words, make hope visible. Um,
Absolutely. Thank you so
so,
much. This has been a wonderful, wonderful trip down memory lane.
thank you so much, Adrian. My many, many thanks to Adriane Heflin for joining the PAD podcast. If you are interested in being on the podcast, you are a PAD alum or alumni adjacent or just a fan, I would love to interview you for the podcast, so don't be shy. Do reach out to me, and I'd be happy to put you on the calendar for that. But again, thanks to Adriane for her passion, her just wonderful energy, and for her enthusiasm about the theater and about the performing arts department. Thank you for listening.